on 365 Sports. So Paul sent me this, and then again, we'll hear from Matt Baker, who put this up. So there was a Board of Trustees meeting today, and Matt Baker just happened to be getting his, I think he said it's either his wife or his Honda Accord, something fixed on it. And this is like, whoa. So Florida State AD Michael Alford having interesting talks to the Board of Trustees, saying that the Noles contribute roughly 15% of the ACC media rights value, but gets 7% of the distributions. That's one. Number two, at the end of the day, if something's not done, we cannot be $30 million behind every year compared to our peers. There's much more on this, including it would be a $120 million buyout, which would mean they'd have to make it up in 4 years, and they would have more. But the ever-changing landscape of college sports, realignment or otherwise, and here comes maybe just a little bit of okay, the Big Ten's fine, the SEC's fine, the Big 12's taking care of itself for the most part. Not sure what the Pac-12 is going to do. Maybe it's time for us to start making some waves.
Well, they have to. And look, the ACC as a whole has to really look at itself. Now, the problem the ACC finds itself in, though, is that, when Texas and Oklahoma can make that claim in the Big 12, there are other entities even throughout. Like even that were, Nebraska was a big part of that revenue at one time. A&M was a big part of that revenue at one time. And I know there was uneven revenue sharing in the Big 12, and they were part of that. But the Big 12, to make some of those claims like that, was even for Texas, who's a huge brand. And they're a brand mostly because of what they've done well in the past as opposed to the current times, but they're still a huge brand. No, I'm not knocking them.
They're a brand, no matter.
Yeah, they're a brand no matter what.
They are powerful. They're huge. There's a reason why they're always in one of the better slots when it comes to men's basketball, not just football. They've earned that, even though the last 10 years in football has been erratic.
Yeah, but Oklahoma was really the only one of those two who could really say, we have brought consistent national television postseason relevance to the Big 12, especially over the last decade. When they made that move, Oklahoma can say that. Texas is like, yeah, and we kind of built this thing at the beginning because of our thing. But that being said, the ACC is different when it comes to football. When it comes to football, since 1991, only 8 other times has a team not named FSU or Clemson won the football title. And so
for 31 years.
For 32 years.
32 years, including the most recent. Okay, 32 years. 24 of those 32, which is 67%, are Florida State, Clemson winning the ACC.
Yes. And Georgia Tech and Virginia Tech have the next most after that. And then there's one-offs of like Maryland, who's not in the league anymore, and Pittsburgh, and Wake Forest has a couple. But so the league cannot say, they could not stand up there and say that we can get to that point where we are providing this much of the value. FSU and Clemson can. North Carolina can because of they're just big and they have a lot of weight. And then there's some other, stuff in there that might happen here and there. But Miami's not won the league since they've been in it. They've provided absolutely no value to it as far as that goes. And adding Pitt and Syracuse didn't help them at all monetarily. So none of the things that they've done, like it helped them stave off what was happening to the Big 12 in 2012 to them. But now in this phase, all it's done is keep a group together that very clearly some of your larger partners are starting to look around at what other people have done, right or wrong, and say, well, why can't that be us?
All right, well, let me ask you a question. You have been very much you thought what UT and Oklahoma did, obviously they did theirs behind closed doors in the darkness of night. Is Florida State being UT here?
Oh, yeah. Look, I think it's very it would be hypocritical of me to say it's not messed up what Florida State is doing, and it wasn't. Look, if they were going to leave, they should have left in 2012 when the writing was on the wall for this anyway. What was going to change? They won the national championship the very next year. And then a couple years after that, Clemson's dynasty started. So the two of them could have very easily left then. In fact, it was talked about.
Okay, we know that. Why now?
Because now the money is huge. And if you look, look, Texas and Oklahoma, I don't think were wrong to go to the SEC. I think they were wrong to do it the way that they did it and then complain about problems that they were causing on the way out. Like, oh, well, this never got bigger. Well, you were stopping a lot of that. So I don't know what Florida State's stopped. I have no idea as far as expansion, they've never gotten in the way. Revenue sharing, they've never gotten in the way. So they don't have that. Clemson, same way. North Carolina, same way. So now when you hear a couple weeks ago, the ACC starts talking about unequal revenue sharing, well, that wasn't Georgia Tech who brought that up. You know that. And the thing about it is there's a good section of the ACC that are those schools like Georgia Tech that probably would be okay with it because with unequal revenue sharing.
But they're in Atlanta. I mean, isn't there a little bit? So you do think that the other schools would let Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, and Virginia get a larger piece of the pie?
I think that it would be less resistance than in most conferences because they see where things are now, and if that is what's going to keep them in the league. But here's the problem with that, Smokey. If you're $30 million behind, and if you are Florida State and Clemson, your true rivals, you're the ones economic rivals, the ones you're looking at, the ones that you go in and when you go to recruit a kid and they go, oh, Kirby Smart was just here.
Yep.
Nick Saban was just here. Those are the people they're worried about. They're not really worried about Virginia Tech.
All right, so let me ask you a question.
So can you make up $30 million by uneven revenue sharing? I don't think you can.
Here's a couple of quotes, two more quotes to get to from, this is Matt Baker on his Twitter feed at MBakerTB Times. The Board of Trustees asked him, the AD Alford, about a buyout to leave the ACC. Legal counsel says about $120 million. So if we make up $30 million, we're behind from we make up the $30 million, we're behind from our peers. It'd be about 4 years before they broke even. He also said at the end of the day, Alford at the end of the day, for Florida State, that's who he's talking about, his program, his school, to compete nationally, something has to change going forward. Now, that's a shot across the bow, along with the fact that they're talking about this somewhat publicly. Now, I got a question for you. Florida State, why would the SEC blindsided A&M? Mm-hmm. And A&M tried to prevent it because they leaked the story, Brent Zwerneman, and it was like, holy crap, all right? So they angered A&M, and you could be a UT fan or any other fan and go, oh, get over it. No, I mean, they blindsided A&M with this. The SEC took some heat from that, I'm sure, from A&M, whether or not they were barking into a forest with nobody else listening. Are they going to do that with Clemson when they have South Carolina and Florida State, when they have the University of Florida, and then now alienate 2 more or 3 of their schools?
Well, here's
because if I'm Florida and South Carolina, I'm on the phone every day going, don't do it.
Well, here's the thing, though.
Don't do it.
But if I'm Texas A&M, I can call Florida and South Carolina and be like, hey, where were you when
I agree.
When our thing happened? And so that's where the dynamic is different. Now, I also think that the Big Ten, even though, like, I don't know if they're want for expansion right now, but if certain ACC schools came in the water, I do think that, well, at least under the previous regime, I think Kevin Warren would have wanted to go coast to coast, right? I think, but I don't know if the current, who the commissioner is going to be, do that. But the SEC is the one that makes the most sense for those schools, and that's probably who they want to go and play. So
I want to bring this up. So
it wouldn't be easy.
So you're talking about a conference that, even though you've had your haves and have-nots, has always been about we're as strong as our weakest link. Mm-hmm. You don't hear people bitching about what Vanderbilt brings to the table when it comes to football. You don't hear them even saying that about what happens with what anyone else brings to the table, because people have had their ups and downs. So now you have one school that was blindsided. You have always been this powerful, massive conference with incredible success, and now all of this value, and you've had that for a while too. And now you're about to maybe tread on the water of 2 more of your originals.
Yeah.
Now, South Carolina's a late ad, but still, you're going to do that too?
I mean, I don't think it would stop them, but given what they've already done. But yes, they're going to have to finesse that situation. So if you go back when Florida State joined the ACC in 1991, they had 2 options. They could join the ACC and no one was going to fight them on it, or they would have to get in what would be not only athletic battle, but a kind of a statewide political tete-a-tete with Florida. Florida did not want them in there and was going to do everything they could to keep them out, slowing up the process, and FSU had made the decision not to be a major independent anymore. So Bobby Bowden, genius that he was, said, look, let's go to the ACC and win the son of a gun every year and play Florida once a year anyway and compete for national titles and not have to deal with all this political BS that will follow us forever. Now, that was a very long time ago, and so now maybe things have changed, but yeah, I mean,
there's just something to put on the table.
Yeah.
All right.